Hey guys, welcome to Big Face. Sammy Jane here, your host, extraordinaire, or whatever. um, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about this week's episode. You've actually seen and heard this guest on my show before, Mr. John O'Connor, but this is an episode and an interview that was recorded before the COVID pandemic. If you guys have been following the last couple weeks, I decided to air some of the older episodes that I recorded before all of this happened. And for a while, I didn't want to air them because I felt like they didn't have a place. But in listening back, I think they're pretty beautiful and they still hold up for us as humans and us as creatives. And I thought, hey, now is as good a time as any for us to hear all these words. Because even though the world's a little bit different right now, we're still human. We're still trying to figure out how to do what we love. And God willing, the world is going to go back to, I don't know if it'll ever be what it was, but I think we'll be able to be out and about at some point. So anyway, this is Mr. John O'Connor, comedian, podcaster of Spectacular Show at Spectacular Show Pod. You'll hear him. But this was, guys, I just want to share with you, this was my test interview. This was before I started doing any other interviews. He was my guinea pig. He was the pusher for me to start this podcast and YouTube show. And this was a practice interview just to get the nerves out to see if I had it in me. And you know what? Like I've said before, guys, it's worth taking the risk. He pushed me, and this was a practice one. And for the first one I ever tried to do, I don't think it's too bad, man. And I think that's partly because of the guy that I was interviewing. He's a pretty good dude. He made it comfortable, and we just had fun. So I hope you guys have fun, too. I hope you enjoy it. And love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being with me. It makes all the difference. All right, guys, enjoy. See you soon.
And now, this week's edition of Big Face with your host, Samantha Jane Tilton.
Hey, welcome to Big Face with Sammy Jane Tilton. My guest tonight is comedian and podcaster John Joseph O'Connor.
Bring it in.
Welcome, my man.
Thank you for including my middle name, like I'm in trouble with my mom.
You're in trouble with me tonight and always.
I'm a minute in and I'm getting scolded.
I'm such a bitch. I just can't help it.
I love you anyway.
Welcome to my show.
I am really happy to be here on your show.
I bet you are.
I can't wait to listen back to your show. Tell all my friends about it.
Tell all my friends. Yeah, you're like a little kid.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go and I'm gonna tell all my friends.
I'm gonna grab people by the throat and be like, listen to my girlfriend's podcast. Right now.
She's awesome and I love her.
I don't care if we're in church. You fucking download it.
Catches and everything. Oh, hi.
Hi.
So, all right, what are we going to talk about tonight?
You tell me.
Well, first thing that I would like to talk about with you that you don't talk about enough. I'm just going to say it. You don't. You flat out don't talk about it enough. So you have a podcast.
I do.
Tell me a little bit about that, will you? Swear to God, anytime I'm with this guy, I'm walking around.
You are my best promoter.
It is anything. You spend so much of your weeks, so many hours of your time not sleeping, dedicated to this thing that you believe in, that you love doing, that is new for you, that you're excited about. And whenever anybody talks to you about you never mention it. You mention everything else.
I think I just forget. I know it's bad, but I do. I just forget to tell people about it.
I don't believe that.
Maybe it's my own thing, too, that I don't realize. Maybe I don't want to sound braggy or I don't know. Anytime, how do I say this? I feel like anytime it's like someone who's writing a book and they've been writing it for like 5 years and they're like, well, in my book, it's like, you're never going to fucking read. I'm not going to read your book. You go home and smoke weed or drink, and then you write 8 sentences and cry about some ex-girlfriend, and this is I'm never going to read you a
This
book.
is not a book. This is a diary.
Which,
this is a diary.
yeah, exactly. So
But
I don't like to be like, oh, I was writing in my diary last night.
except the difference is that this
Yeah.
isn't like a cum-stained piece of paper under your mattress.
It's not.
It's a podcast that is out in the world that, if I'm not mistaken, people are listening to in other countries, in other states. If they haven't downloaded in China, lots of people have gone to look at it. Am I correct?
Well, I don't. That's yes and no.
Okay. Explain.
So one day in China, I had 20 visits on my podcast. 20 unique hits on the podcast's website.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems really strange to me that out of nowhere, one day, randomly, 20 individual people would go to the podcast website.
And it's 20 different individual people?
As far as I know, because I think if like if I wanted to, for instance, if I wanted people to bump up the numbers, I could just be like, hey, go click on this website 10 times for me today, and I'd be getting hundreds of hits, which I don't think it works that way. I think it's unique hits, meaning like every 24 hours, whatever the cycle of time is, a unique IP address.
I wonder if it was one person clicking on 20 of the different episodes.
I mean, maybe it could have been, but they didn't download any. That's the problem.
Okay.
20 people were like, screw this.
But somewhere in China,
Yeah.
someone somehow got to your podcast.
Someone did. It's funny because I don't really have any marketing or anything for the show. So aside from Instagram, Spectacular Show Pod.
And me.
Yes, and you. Thank you again. But Spectacular Show Pod on Instagram. Spectacular Show POD. The thing is, I don't advertise anywhere. So anybody that listens to the podcast heard about it from their friend, or they just found it by accident, randomly. And
San Jose.
it's kind of cool to log into the website, the back end of it, and look at all the numbers and just be like, I don't know anyone in San Jose. I technically know 2 people in San Jose, but they don't know who I am or where I am anymore.
And so we'll explain that when John logs into the back numbers, when he sees on the website, there's people in Portland, Oregon, there's people in San Jose, in California, that are following, that are listening.
You can see the particular service I use, which is called Podomatic. Other services may offer this too. I think they do.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you have Podomatic, you can go into the back end and kind of look at, all right, I've got X amount of downloads today or X amount of downloads in this time frame. And then you can click on the geography to see where the people were that downloaded it. So I can tell that Portland, Oregon, I have people that listen there. I can tell that San Jose, I have people that listen there. And it's really weird. It's all over the country. New York and Boston. I mean, I'm from Boston, live in New York. Those are obviously going to be my 2 biggest markets, right? But I don't know anybody in Raleigh, North Carolina. I don't know anybody in Wichita, Kansas. I don't know anybody in San Jose or Portland, Oregon or whatever. And people every week, there are people, someone there listens to the show. It's really cool to know that.
I was going to say, it's maybe the coolest way to get found out is, yes, there's advertising. There's people that you can pay to get your name out there. But the people that are getting to know you, it's pretty much word of mouth. It's pretty much, somehow, some way it caught on. And that's pretty cool. So I want to go further with this. So tell us about your podcast.
Okay.
It is, am I correct in that it is all you? So you interview people, right? What is the premise of your podcast?
It's predominantly me. So basically the podcast, I do 2 levels a week. I do Tuesday, I do a -1 level. And when you're like, level, what do you mean? Well, remember Super Mario Brothers? How the levels were 1-1,
Yes.
1-2, and so on?
Uh-huh.
Every week, it's a new level. And every level is 2 parts. So on Tuesday...
What made you do that? Why'd you name it that way?
Just because it's easier I think it's easier to... Because the reason specifically, a few things. 1, I love video games. 2, the way I do the podcast is it's almost always 2 episodes per week. And so far, and this is what I hope to achieve with the podcast, every week or every level, it's the same person on both episodes.
Got it.
So the -1 level is it's more than just an interview. It's a fake late night show. So there's an intro song and an introduction, and I, quote unquote, come out and do a monologue. And I just have a bunch of jokes, and then you put like a laugh track to it and all this other stuff to make it sound like it's a late night show. And then
And when you say you put a laugh track to it and you quote unquote do monologue, what that really means is that you put laugh tracks and you write and do these monologues and characters. Yeah.
I do everything. I do have one friend of mine, Rick Canavan, who just over the past few weeks, he's like, do you mind if I contribute some monologue jokes? And I was like, I would love that. It would make my job a lot easier. So I do credit him every week since he's started writing me some monologue jokes,
awesome.
Which is great. Every late night host has a team of writers. It's just me and Rick so far. So
and it's been all you for all these weeks.
Yeah.
Writing and doing all of this.
Yes, and Rick just started helping me, which is hugely helpful.
Freaking awesome.
So we do the monologue. I edit all of that together. I don't. I do it in pieces. I record the whole thing in pieces. But then I have, like, one thing I'm a huge fan of. I remember, I don't know why, but ever since I was a little kid, especially when I was a little kid, we didn't have cable, so we just had local television, antenna style. But
like me now.
Exactly. One thing I love, though, is I love low-budget, terrible ads. I don't know why. I think it's because I grew up like in summertime watching, daytime television at between, let's call it 12:30 when the 12 o'clock news ends until 3 o'clock when cartoons come back on. You've got like 2.5 hours of just terrible daytime TV.
Yep.
And it's usually reruns of old shows or whatever, and I remember just these local furniture ads or local lawyers and these things. I remember them to this day. I remember the ads, and some of them were so shitty. There was this guy, if you Google him, just YouTube his ads. They're so funny. There was a guy in the New England area, primarily Boston, who had ads for a company called Dean's Home Furniture.
Oh, you've shared that with me.
And it's, hi, I'm Dean from Dean's Home Furniture. We got the dresser, the bedspread, even the box mattress. All just $4.99. Can they beat my underprices? I doubt it. He just was this.
I doubt it.
He was just this, marionette. Like, he was like a guy on strings with this he looked like he was on crystal meth. His fucking face was so wired back. Like, I doubt it. It's like, am I going to come into your kids' home and suck out their soul? Probably. Can you stop me? I doubt it. He was a lunatic. And I'm watching this, like, in between episodes of Perfect Strangers at like 1:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in the summer. And it's like, you want to come to my store and work here? I doubt it. Yeah, no shit. You're a maniac.
You're going to kill my kids.
So, anyway, one thing I like to do on Spectacular Show, which is the name of my pod, I don't know if we said it yet.
Yeah, did we say it? I'm not sure. But that's probably good to know, people. It's Spectacular Show.
Spectacular Show. It's available everywhere except for Stitcher. I don't know what it is. I got to figure that out.
I wish I
everywhere
could figure
else.
Out what Stitcher is. So good. We're
it
good.
should be available everywhere else. But if it's not, send an email to spectacularshowpod@gmail.com and let me know, and I'll get it set up wherever you need it set up. But basically, it's, like I said, late night fake show. So every week, because of my love for these terrible, horrible local advertisements, I make fake advertisements that play during the show. So usually, I usually do a couple a week. It's hard to do more than a few with my schedule.
Yep.
But I at least usually add at least a couple in there per week. So it goes, intro, monologue, fake ad, and then a guest. And the guest that I have is a real person. They're an actor. They're a director. They're a musician. They're a comedian. They're, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just talked to them a little bit. For the first 3 episodes, I did not use this formula, but someone told me this, and I think it works much better. So starting with episode 4,
Was it the Superman? Shauna.
Yes,
Yes.
my friend Shauna, who is an actress or actor. I don't want to get in trouble for saying actress, which I've
'Cause you
had
might, so
happen
you have to
before.
correct yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'm sorry. I used a word that's perfectly functional.
Although I've always called myself an actor, and people have always asked me, "You're not an actress?" And I'm always like, this is my whole, like, for a million years, and I'm always like, why did I say actor? I'm not even aware of it. It's a thing. I don't care whether I say actor. I just say actor.
I'm also not attaching anything to the word
Right.
other than the idea that you're an actor and the idea of not using a gender-specific
Yeah.
idea is so new that I'm also fine with, and I'll eventually do it, but it's like all of a sudden one day I'm supposed to throw out 30-something years of pre-programmed bullshit, and I'm just supposed to be like, there's a new thing today. We don't use the word the. Fuck you. I'm going to talk about whatever. Anyway, so I have actors, actresses, directors, directresses, whatever it is, I have them on.
You mean it in goodwill. There you
I
go.
do mean it in goodwill. I don't want to upset anybody. It's just a matter of like, I'm fine with what anything anybody wants to do, more
Just
or
tell
less.
me. I'll do it. I just don't always know.
Just also understand this like window of this grace period I need to have in order to get my shit in line.
I think
that's all.
I think that's fair.
I don't think I'm asking too much. I'm all for you, whatever you want to do. Just let me eventually, slowly give up those words, which I'm not even thinking about.
Let me get there. Let me
That's
get
all.
there.
I'm 100% behind whatever anybody wants to do.
That's good. That's good.
So starting with Shauna's episode, I switched it up where now the episode, the -1 on Tuesday, is all about the person.
Right.
You're an actor. How'd you start? How, what inspires you? Who are your favorites?
Mm-hmm.
What should we see? That kind of stuff. And then I usually I've changed up the formula a little bit. I have some more fake ads. I have usually a fake guest where I will interview a completely artificial person or thing, and
That you
that
dreamed up.
I made up. Yeah, I interviewed a straw recently.
Crazy straw.
It was a
Am
crazy
I
straw.
correct?
Yeah. Dew was all over the place.
The thing is, I'll just say, you said sometimes you do a couple commercials. It depends, and you're varying it. What I do like, I'll say this, and then I'll let you continue about your podcast, is that you have such a high standard for comedy in general and for yourself completely. So even though you'll maybe that's why you don't push your podcast. Like, you hold your own. You can be proud of what you do. But even when things are so good, your standard is just so high. So
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're planning on doing, let's say you want to do 4 commercials, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not up to par to where you believe that they should be, you're not going to do 4. You'd rather do 2 if they're going to be at better level.
Well, yes and no, and that's the
Tell me.
thing. I fully admit that I don't really think anybody's funny. So it's one of those things.
Nobody.
And I don't mean that, but it's one of those things where
Yeah, no, I know.
the amount of things that I see work or get laughs or whatever, I'm always amazed. Like, I can't believe people are laughing at that. And that sounds like I'm being cynical, and I'm not.
No.
It's just like I'm trying too hard a lot of the time. And when I say I'm trying too hard, I don't mean to be saying something like, "Oh, I'm so good at this, I got to dumb it." That's not at all what I mean. What I do mean is that I'm always trying to. Nothing's ever good enough, and that's one thing that is that's a flaw of mine. I have gone a long time in my life without creating things because in my mind they won't be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And what this has forced me to do is there comes this point where I know the commercial or the fake commercial or whatever it may be, the monologue, whatever it is not up to what I want it to be. But it doesn't matter. I have to put it out. And by committing to that, it just forces output. So whether it's up to your standard or not, if you've put an honest effort into it and it's still not good enough, doesn't matter. People want content. That's the world we live in now.
Yeah.
Podcasts are
Now.
yeah,
Yep.
podcasts are predominantly free, and people, it's a comfort thing. People like to have their podcast on at the gym or in the yard working or just at work or on the train or whatever it might be. So there are people that listen to a podcast, and it may be a guilty pleasure of theirs. It may be something they genuinely really look forward to every week. So for me, yeah, it's almost never good enough. But at the same time, I have to just go, this has to be done now.
Yep.
And make it and put it out and put my name on it and put it out the door. And even though it's not what I ultimately would love for it to be or hope for it to be, having a job and having a relationship and only having so much time to do it in, it just forces you to go, this is good enough, and just kick it out the door.
I think that is so much with all creative endeavors, to throw at perfection, because whenever trying to achieve it, that's when you're just doomed. You're just doomed because it's never going to be perfect.
It will never be and oftentimes imperfect things are better.
To me, the best.
Yeah.
The absolute best.
So
let me ask you. So you have your podcast now.
Yeah.
And you've had it it's been out for how long? It's been recent. It's not.
It came out October 8th.
Okay.
And since then, I've done predominantly 2 episodes a week. There were 2 particular weeks where I did 3. One, I had a guest bail at the last second, so I had you on, which was wonderful.
Which was wonderful.
We did the Warp Zone.
Not on me, but yes, that you had me on.
Yes, it was wonderful. But we had the review of 3 movies.
Yep.
Miyazaki animated films from Studio Ghibli. And we just talked about those, and that was great.
That was wonderful. I had never seen any of them. That was a great opportunity for me to see them and then get to discuss them. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I people reacted well to it, so that was cool. It was a little disruption to the formula of the show, which is, every week 2 episodes. And then we had we did a watch along episode together. We did Great Pumpkin.
Yes.
And we
Charlie
watched
Brown.
along and said 1, 2, 3, play. And if you want to watch it with us, you can watch it with us. And
That was cool.
episode got a bunch of downloads. So
That was really cool.
Yeah.
I started listening to that. It was wonderful.
And one thing I wanted to say is
please.
we never got to the other part of the formula.
That's exactly what I was just going to
Okay.
say. I was just about to say, did we ever finish that?
So we did do a few weeks where it was 3 episodes, and
Yes.
it kind of broke from the formula. But aside from the late night show, which lately, like I said, I kind of threw the guests out. They'll come back, but it's just a matter of some weeks I'm just like, I don't want to talk to a fake guest. I want to do something else.
Yeah.
So instead, the past couple weeks, I made a fake movie trailer. I made a fake song, that kind of stuff. That's on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, the same guest, the real guest from the show, we have another interview with them, and we discuss. The entire episode is devoted to something they want to talk about, whether it's a book, movie, TV show. It could be a sporting event. It could be a video game. It could anything they want. They pick a thing. I do ask them, like, could it be something I'm familiar with so we can talk and it's not just you?
No, John. No.
And people are usually receptive. They give me a list of stuff, and we pick something and settle on it. And we talk about it.
Okay.
That one, there's no, comedy extra content. It's just a straight up podcast.
Although there's you to it, so there's a little comedy.
Well, we make jokes and stuff, sure,
Yeah.
but there's no like extra sketches
Right,
or anything like that. So, and I like it because it gives people a podcast every week, but almost as a bonus episode, it gives people like this fake late night comedy show.
You also, I've seen that you also do your research. So, like, there are things that you maybe have seen that you can discuss, but then you rewatch them or replay them or whatever the thing is.
For sure.
Yes.
It depends on what it is. If it's a movie or a video game or something, I'll revisit it leading up to the interview. If it's the movie, I'll watch it that day or the day before. If it's a video game, I'll leave myself enough time to play it again before I talk about it. Some people are like, let's play Red Dead Redemption 2. And I'm like, I would love to play that, but I don't have 100 hours
Can we just not?
Yeah,
today?
let's pick another game. Even though I would love to. I've never even played it. I played the first
Yeah.
one, and I loved the first one. Was so good.
Really?
And I know the second one will be excellent.
Yeah.
But I don't have 100 hours.
Yep.
I wish
It's a
I
lot.
did.
It's a commitment, man, for an episode.
I'm certain it would be worth every second, but
Yeah.
I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I don't have the time. I might be able to play it an hour a day. Who wants to spend 100 days? It's like give me 3-4 weeks where I could cram it all in like a psycho.
Yeah, it's a lot, man.
Yeah.
One thing I really, really like is that it's not all about you.
No.
And while I love hearing about you, it shows a lot about who you are. You're very considerate. You care to hear about other people. You care to talk about, think about, take time to appreciate what they do. That's pretty much the essence of your podcast. Aside from you doing the creative pieces of it, of creating stuff to make other people laugh, make other people happy, make other people think. It's really about getting to know another person. And
Yeah.
and I think that says a lot about you, in my opinion. I just had to say that.
Well, thank you.
It's true.
I mean, the truth is, I had this idea for Spectacular Show. I did stand-up comedy for a while. I still do it, not as much as I used to, but I had the idea for Spectacular Show a long time ago, a few years ago at least, but it was, how am I going to put on this live fake late night show with ridiculous, silly stuff? And I don't have a band. I don't have a room. I don't have a band. I don't have people. I don't have an audience. I don't have guests. I don't have the time or the money or the energy to create fake costumes or all that. I don't have any of those things.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make a podcast. So then the idea was just like, well, what if you just make Spectacular Show a podcast and it'll just be audio and people can fill in their own vision of it. And I liked the idea, and I thought, all right, I'll try to make this happen. And, I researched different editing programs and all of those things. I found websites that I could pay for sound effects and those kind of things so I could make sure that I wasn't going to get sued for using something. I got a guy that I know who was just on my podcast, PG Boo. I had him. That's his name, PG Boo. PG Boo
really?
Music. I had him do music for the show, so everything about the show is ours. I mean, some of the sounds or some of the fake music or whatever that came from a website that I paid to, and it's use any of this for commercial use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you pay for this membership, you can use this for whatever you want.
It'd take you a lifetime to create every sound.
Yeah,
and like horseshoes,
of course, all of those things would be a nightmare to have to replicate myself.
You have to get it from somewhere.
But I put a lot of time and effort into researching it, and I'm still learning. I learn every week. I learn something new. But it's been rewarding, at least, to have people tell me they like it. To get a random text from a friend of mine who will just have, in quotes, one of the things I said on the podcast and then have 3 skulls show up like, oh, I'm dead from this line, That's, that's nice because I do put a lot of time in. It's funny. I basically put out 2 podcasts a week. Yeah. So whenever I hear friends of mine like, oh, I've got to edit the podcast, I'm like, do you? Do you have to edit your podcast, which is just you sitting there talking to someone? Do you have to edit it? Do you have to drop music at the front and the back and then call it a day? Is that what you have to do? Kiss my ass.
No,
I'm editing in claps and laughs. You know how many times? Oh.
No fingers pointed at me at all there.
None at all. Well, the thing is, you haven't complained about it yet, so you're off the hook.
But I'll get there, and then you can smack me.
No, I would never do that.
So, do you love your podcast? And that's a big statement, but do you love that you have it?
I love that I have it, and I love that I'm making something every week. Ultimately, do I think what I put out is up to... For instance, if I had no job and I were getting paid to make the podcast as opposed to doing it in my free time, I feel like the podcast would be infinitely better.
fair. If I
Just because I don't, I'd have an extra 30, 40 hours a week to work on it.
right.
I could make something really supreme comparatively to what I put out now. That's just what I think. But am I happy? Here's the thing. This is the first thing in my life I've ever been like, I am happy to put my name on this.
That pretty much is a lot.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
I know I don't tell enough people about it, but I do tell people about it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where some of it is really dumb, and I'm actually very happy with that. I want some of it to be really dumb and really silly and really zany, like a cartoon quality zany.
Yes. I mean, I would love, the thing is, you say dumb. I would,
Sometimes dumb is great.
yes, but the thing is dumb also is at a base level of like, bleh. Like there is absolutely no effort or like thought to dumb. And the thing is that even if your stuff, if you purposely put it across as dumb, it is so intelligent what you put in to make it that way. So I wouldn't say it is dumb. It's silly.
It's silly and zany.
And it's intelligent. I mean, okay, so this brings
some of it
yes.
is intelligent, I think.
Yes.
Some of it.
Okay.
Not enough of it, but some of it. Sure.
Look, if I'm
not mad about it. Any of it.
I write, I direct, I act. I could make a movie right here. Would it be a bazillion times better if I had a big studio behind me that would pay for the sets and the costumes,
right?
And that I didn't have to direct it and like fix my own makeup and all that stuff, and somebody to run the camera and I didn't have to keep running back and forth? Yeah, that would probably be a gazillion times better. But you're doing it all yourself.
More or less. I have had a few people, you included, do voices for me, which is supremely helpful because there are only so many voices a person can do. So I try to mix them up every week if it's a fake ad or a fake guest or whatever. That's partly why I interviewed The Straw. It's like I've only got so many voices I can do. I've got to have somebody else do the talking here. So I've had people, I've had you, I've had my friend Josh Tobin.
Yeah.
I think maybe some other people, but I've had them do voices for some of the ads or some of the characters or whatever, which is so helpful. Because I've only got so much that I can do physically, without sounding the exact same over and over. And that's the other thing is trying to make the characters or the ads or whatever, trying to make them sound not like me is a challenge.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because you gave like a shout out to me and Josh but otherwise, and yes, and your friend Rick has now given you a couple of jokes and you credit him, but I really honestly, since I've listened to this, since I've known this, I don't think there's been many other voices that I can even think about.
I think it might just be you and Josh.
Yes. So, and you're like, yeah, and other people help me. It's like, okay, that's nice for you to give credit, but man, you've been doing this a lot. You've been doing all of it. So I'm just saying. So I want to ask you. So, all right, you made your podcast. You started doing stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you do stand-up for? Tell me that. And then when did you start the podcast? It's October, but how long did you do stand-up before that?
I've been on and off with stand-up since 2003.
Okay.
Now, on and off, I say that because, like, when I started, just the idea that, like, the first night I did very well. If I had not done so well, I probably would not have gone back. And it wasn't that I had great jokes, but I was supremely confident the first night I did it because I went to like the Sunday night amateur night and there were 8 or 9 people in front of me and most of them bombed. Most of them. And I just remember being in the audience thinking like, there's 50 people here. I've got 14 of them. I've never done this, but I know I'm going to do better than this person. I know it. And I did. I smashed my first set. But it also backfired horribly because then in my mind I was great at stand-up. And it's like, no, You came
You're
off
the
the bench
king,
and you
man.
went 4 for 4. Fine, but that doesn't mean you're like the best baseball player ever.
Yeah.
But I did, I was very, I think like a lot of comedians, but I was very insecure, really, really delusional, which I think you probably need to be a stand-up at any rate. But so I did it for those first few years. If I did a few shows a year, well, I'm a comedian. It's like, no, you're not. You did 5 shows this year. That does not make you a comedian.
And nowadays, you've been doing it all this many years, and you have your own podcast. And I'll say, "Can I call you a comedian?" You're like, "Nah." You still won't give yourself the label comedian.
No, I don't. And I don't because I think if you're a comedian, you should be doing it as a profession, even if it's a supplemental profession. There was a period of about 2 years where I was a comedian.
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay.
Rhode Island is where I predominantly got good. And it's a very small market, and it was one of those things where I lived in Attleboro, Massachusetts, which is a city right on the Rhode Island border.
Yep.
And I was doing these shows where I could drive, an hour with traffic to Boston, pay to park, go work the door the whole night, see people, tear tickets, and I'd get 5 to 10 minutes on a show. Or I could drive 35 minutes, not pay to park, and be getting like $25 to do a hosting gig, or $50 to do a middle spot, or what. It just was one of those things where I had more freedom in Rhode Island, and there were fewer. It was more of the Wild West in terms of comedy. There was not the same rigidity that there was in Boston. Boston was so much more competitive.
Yeah.
That
New York City.
I mean, yeah, New York City is like that, but I just started doing Rhode Island, and eventually, because it's such a small market, you only have to be better than like 30 people to be a club comedian. I became this comedian that in Rhode Island, I could, for the most part, walk into any club or show, and there aren't that many, but I could kind of walk into any one and be like, is it okay if I do a spot? And unless it was a club, if it was just some open mic or some booked show, they were, oh, please. They were like thrilled that I was there.
That's great.
It was cool. But
That's amazing.
There was about a year and a half or 2 years that I was out every night, and I went to every show I could go to, and I just went, can I do a spot? And I got told no probably 5 or 6 times in that 2-year frame because they didn't have room.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But every other night I asked, I got up. Some nights they'd be like, do as much time as you want. I would do 45 minutes on a Tuesday in the summer at like a Portuguese restaurant in Fall River, Massachusetts, because I could. And there'd be 8 people there. But if I did 45 minutes and got 2 gigantic laughs on 2 things, I knew those 2 things are going to be monster shit at the club.
Okay. So you talk about you went out on Tuesday night.
I went out every night.
What drove you? What made you go? Like, what made you decide I'm gonna be a comic? I'm gonna go out there and like that before you went on that first night. What the hell made you all of a sudden go? I'm gonna put my life out there.
Well, I always loved stand-up since I was a kid. I just loved to laugh. I just thought it was the best thing, and watching people make people laugh. I mean, who doesn't want to be funny? Who's like, nah, fuck funny people? It's like, oh, you don't like enjoying yourself?
I mean, I hate laughing. I hate
know.
smiling, to be honest. It's very terrible.
And I can't believe we're together. It's just like, dude, we can cut all that out if you don't like
it
it.
actually makes me really happy because it makes me cry so much.
Yeah,
Which is
that's the way I like my
favorite.
women, just bawling. Not bawling B-A-L-L either. B-A-W-L. I mean like crying. I don't mean like living large. I'm talking crying because they're not bawling with 2 L's. So,
I'm your perfect woman.
yes, she loves to cry. I love that she does. I enjoy the tears. I drink them in a glass.
Turns them on. I'm just gonna say it.
Oh man, I gotta stop talking about it. But
professionalism. Come on, man. So what drove you?
I just always loved stand-up, and enough people told me throughout high school and college, and then even after, like, you should be a comedian. I don't know how many people told me that in my life, but a lot of people told me that. And it got to the point where I always wanted to try it, and I just didn't have the guts. And I had this girlfriend at the time who really pushed me to be like, nah, do something you're scared of, do whatever. And so I did. She convinced me to do it, and I did it, and it went very well. And, then there were ups and downs throughout it, but, there was a period there where I feel like there was a period where I was a pretty good comedian. Not great, not awesome, but I was pretty good, pretty decent.
On your standards, which I'm
Sure.
I'm thinking is a little bit better than what you would say, but I'll take your word.
Fair enough. I think I'll say this. I'm very comfortable saying this. I feel like I was a comedian where if you went to a comedy club and you didn't know who I was, but you watched the show, for the most part, the audience was going to go home happy. I feel very comfortable saying that.
I'm glad you can say that because I'm sure that that's the case.
No, I don't think I deserved living in the lap of luxury, or no, I don't think I deserved my own special or anything like that. But yeah, if you were going to go out to a comedy...
starting out.
Sure. But if you're going to go out to a comedy show and watch a comedy show, yes, I feel like I would deliver. And yeah, maybe you didn't like me, but that's any comedian.
Yep. So you love comedy since you were little.
Yes.
What was it? Everyone always told you were funny. Like, what comedians when you were younger would you watch that you were like,
The ones I remember when it comes to watching stand-up, specifically the ones that I remember are Louis Anderson, who always basically talked about his family, and Sinbad, who didn't just talk about his family, but to this day, I think Sinbad is one of the most underrated comedians ever. He's, I think...
You always say that.
So supremely funny, and he's clean. He's just this big, goofy, likable, I think, brilliant comedian. I can't sing his praises enough. I think he's one of the funniest people I've ever seen in my life. He just is likable, and even when he's acting, I think he's really, really funny.
I haven't seen him since I was younger. Like, what did he used to be in?
He was in a different world. That was his big breakthrough thing.
Yes.
But I used to go to the video store and rent his stand-up comedy. Because, my parents weren't very strict, but there was certain stuff I just couldn't watch or see or whatever. So Sinbad passed the test. I could watch as much of Sinbad as I wanted. So I used to rent the same act. I think it was Atlanta. I forget the name of the special. But there's one of him where he's like, I think it's Atlanta, Georgia. And he is doing a set. And in particular, there's one bit he does about going to college. And he just said, because, you do laundry different when you're in college. And he said, at home, we have whites, and we have delicates, and we have colors. College, dirty! This pile's dirty. This pile's funky. Dirty, we can wear again. Funky, that's in a class all its own. And I think that is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. Dirty, we can wear again. That's a fucking brilliant line. That is so punishingly... Dirty, we can wear again is such a punishingly funny line. It's so good.
You're very big with your words, and like the way that things punch or sound and how many words. You're like...
Well, I try to explain, too, like, the idea of there being, like, first of all, I just said the word like. I say like all the time, and I hate it because I feel like it makes me sound unintelligent. But...
Which you're not, but I understand that because I've tried to get out of the habit of saying that word. It's hard.
It's hard.
In this culture.
And to me, it's a shortcut.
Yep.
It's just let me go from A to B, but I'm going to take a shortcut through the alley. I don't like it. Say the real sentence,
Same
John.
thing as So all this bull crap things. Yeah.
It's like so
It's hard.
what was I just saying before that?
You were saying so about the how many
Words.
the punch. Yeah.
The idea of like trimming, I just said like again, the idea of trimming fat off of a joke so that there's not even a wasted word. The idea where if you say a joke, if you take one word out of the joke no longer works. If your whole act is like that, you're going to be a monster performer. But even the idea of sounds. My buddy Brian had this joke about Top Gun, and he said something about, I don't remember the joke, but the punchline was going to be, I'm going to be Iceman. No, pardon me. First he said, I'm going to be Goose. And then he said, no, I'm going to be Iceman. And he wanted to switch it to Iceman, and I said, no. Keep it as Goose, because it's the same exact joke.
Right.
You're going to be a different person. Yeah, they're different people, but but
now it's in your head. You're not going to be able to stop it. Yep.
But the idea is you want to get to the reveal of the joke. You want the surprise. You want the payoff, the punchline to be as clean of an execution as it possibly can be. So if you say Iceman, it takes you two different sounds to get to the funny part. Whereas if you say Goose, it takes you one sound.
Yeah.
And the word goose, it's almost the word goof. It's very close to the word goof. It's a funnier sounding word. And even though it's just a little teeny thing that makes it like mathematically funnier, it's still funnier. So you should still lean hard into Goose as opposed to Iceman. Unless Iceman has some kind of contextual payoff.
Right.
If you can get the laugh with two sounds or you can get the laugh with one sound, get the laugh with one sound.
See, and that's something that from experience and like the way that your brain thinks is just I could never know that. That's the thing. Is that from experience? Is that just watching things? Is that the way your brain works?
I think it's everything. I think it's doing it for a while. I think it's watching enough other comedians talking about stripping anything you don't need out of the act.
You've shared with me before, and I want to ask you. You've shared that like comedian friends and whatnot, they'll ask you, like they'll tell you a joke, and you'll like kind of noodle it around in your head, and you're like, try it like this, and they'll come back to you and they'll say, "You're right."
Sometimes.
That worked. Okay, that's happened a bunch of times. Would you say that your writing skills for comedy? Do you think like? How do I phrase this right? Do you think that you think like a comedic writer? Like, do you think?
I think this is what I think.
What do you think, John Joseph?
I'm not necessarily the strongest joke writer.
Okay.
I don't think I'm bad at it, but I don't think I'm great at it. However, if somebody gives me a few pieces and they say, stitch this together and make it work, that I do think I'm great at. I'm great at taking something and making it into a cohesive story.
You're making it
with a payoff. For me, I love structure. I love to watch a comedian that starts in a place, they divert for basically the whole show, and then at the end there's this giant payoff that they've brought you back to. I love that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one-man showish. That's not necessarily straight stand-up. There are a lot of comedians where they go up and it's like, I got this new car. Bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
20 jokes about the car. So then my girlfriend said, bang, 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 bang. And that's it. And it's just bit after bit after bit, joke after joke after joke.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate because that is what I really feel I lack in. But I do think if somebody gives me a few pieces and says, can you put this in order? Yes.
Yeah.
I think I can.
It's kind of, and that's the thing, you said structure, and I think that that's the way your brain, like you see the bigger, You say this phrase a lot, actually.
Mhm.
You're like, I can see the matrix, or you said that to me about things, and I feel like that's how you can kind of see the matrix of things. You can see the bigger picture and you can piece it together.
Well, I want to just be clear. In the Matrix, when Neo sees the Matrix, he is a god in the. I don't want anyone to think that I'm like, I'm a god. This bores me. What I
Sorry if
mean
I
to
throw
say
that
is,
away. I know you definitely do not think he does
yeah,
not think like that at
I
all.
just mean to say that
I said that.
now when
I feel like you can see the matrix.
part of it though is the way I watch comedy. I used to just sit back and let it happen. Now I'm too busy trying to decode it as I'm watching it a lot of the time. So when someone is doing a joke, if I know the punchline before they got there, I'm like, I heard that one, or
Yeah.
I saw that one coming, or whatever. There are comedians, plenty of them, but there are comedians that I never see it coming. And there's a kid named Matt Donaher who lives in L.A. He's a funny kid. He was from Boston. I say kid, he's like 30-something. But he,
Good.
time and again, had such original jokes. You'd be watching his act, and it was just so original, and the jokes were so well written. He would pull the rug out from under you a few times per set, and I always admired that. I thought that was excellent.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you want from, if you could have it any which way going forward? You're doing Spectacular Show. That's your podcast. You're enjoying that process. Of course, you'd like more to add to that. You'd like more support with that. You'd like to be everything that it could be. Where from here? What would you want to happen?
Spectacular Show would become an actual show where I could do anything I want. I had a budget where it's like, I want donuts fighting on the show. I want two samurai donuts chopping each other, and then there's jelly gushing out like as if the donut is dying. And then the crowd, which I have already advised before they got there to dress up as zombies, the crowd comes out of the seats and eats the donuts like zombies. That's what I would want. And it would all be on camera.
So like late night show, like exactly
late night show, but I would want it to have the freedom of a cartoon. That's what I would want. I would want it to be the kind of show where absolutely anything could happen. You have no idea what you're getting into every time you go there. I would want it where I'm doing a monologue and ninjas crash through the windows and I have to fight my way out and then keep hitting punchlines between knocking off ninjas. I would want animals to run through the studio. I would want it to be completely wild, I would still want it to have some structure. The other thing, though, is I would love it because ultimately what I would love to do is get it to a place where there were a lot of eyes on it. That way I could then have people on that I know are funny or I know are good musicians or actors or whatever, and other people would see them.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal. If I could still do stand-up as well, which I still like to do, even though I haven't done it as much, I would love that. I don't want to ever let that go, I don't think. But ultimately, yes, if I had my way, I would have Spectacular Show be just that, a crazy late-night style show. It doesn't even have to be on at night. It could be on during the day. It could be for kids coming home from school. I don't care. But I would want it to be a thing where, like, I cut a monologue, then I go to my desk, then a wall opens up, and I start launching pies out the window.
The thing is that you're kind of limitless in that you are a big kid in what I've seen.
Yes.
You relate to kids. You think like that. You love video games. You love cartoons. And yet you are an adult that is intelligent, that has had all this experience. So it's all of these things paired together. There's so many things that you could do with that. And so I see that there's all these different avenues you could take with that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome, man.
You're pretty awesome.
No, you. And I just want to ask you one more thing. Other than Spectacular Show, other than career-oriented stuff, what else would you say is important for you in your life? we
Important
talked
for me in my life.
about, yeah, moving forward. Like you talked about what ideally would go career wise.
Well, I'm finally. Well, sorry, I don't understand the question.
We talked about Spectacular Show.
Yeah.
Ideally, what would that be like for you? Ideally, what would make you happy? Like,
Well, that's the weird thing is for the first time in my adult life, I really am happy. I'm not happy every second of every day, but
Yeah.
for so long I was miserable, or I was, or I was happy and didn't realize it. One of those things.
yeah,
But for the most part, I very much like where I am and what I'm doing. I would love for my life to be me doing this instead of having to go to work. I would love for this to be my work. And if that were the case, then that would be perfect, I would say. Short of that, I mean, things are pretty good. It's really hard to complain.
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it is.
Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Is it okay if I plug my stuff?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please plug your stuff. Are you kidding?
Well, Spectacular Show is available, again, everywhere except Stitcher. I don't know why it's not on Stitcher.
What is Stitcher? You're going to have to tell me after this.
It's just a podcast. It's an app where you can get podcasts, but basically everywhere else. Google, iTunes, Podbean, Spotify. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
The website is spectacularshow.podomatic.com. The Instagram is at Spectacular Show Pod, at Spectacular Show POD. That's also our email, spectacularshowpod@gmail.com. Give us a listen, give us a download. Send me some notes. Let me know what you think. Let me know what else you want to hear, talk about, see, guests, ideas, jokes, whatever. Let me know.
Rate, like, subscribe.
Rate, like, and subscribe. We've got our guy, Synthbot, every week. He
He's got
sings
his own
you
guy,
a song.
man. His own guy.
I've got my own robot that sings to you every week and encourages you to rate,
He's
like,
good
and
people,
subscribe.
guys. He's good people.
And he does it every week, no matter what I ask him. He's the best.
He's
Synthbot.
like die-hard worker, man. He's so loyal.
He's the man.
Oh, man. Check it out. I laughed my ass off. I've been a part of it. It's been a pleasure when I have laughed my ass off. Got to work with this son of a bitch. Hell of a son of a bitch.
One hell of a son of a bitch.
Join us again. Please join us again. You are wonderful.
You are.
And Spectacular Show, Pod, all that good stuff. Check it out. It's the best. Bye, guys. See you next week.